that corridor with him, I'm not talking about myself or just the players, I'm talking about everyone at Manchester United, then you realise what great really means. He was an innovator, he experimented, he pioneered, he went into Europe against everybody else's wishes, and succeeded and gave people a bit of excitement.
Where were we before Sir Matt came to United, and where are we now? And I think that really sums it up. I think you have to say that Manchester United, that Sir Matt has been the greatest, the biggest single influence on Manchester United throughout its history.
It was as if we all felt that it was written that he had to be the man in charge of the first English team to win the European Cup. And I think if you look at the old footage, the first person everyone ran to or went to was the boss.
No one man has ever achieved more for any one football club than Sir Matt Busby. When he joined Old Trafford, it was literally a bomb site. It's now a monument to a man of courage, diplomacy and vision. Busby's name is synonymous with Manchester United. The two are bound together in triumph and in tragedy. Since his passing yesterday, ultimate respect has been paid to a man who was loved and respected throughout the world of football and beyond.
I saw a lad coming down earlier on today with a City strip on and a number 4 in the back, and that was the position he played for Manchester City. You know, and great credit to the lad for doing that. He came down and put a bunch of flowers down at the memorial thing they've got up there. And, well, he's held in great esteem by everyone in Manchester, because everybody that ever met the man or was ever touched by him had great respect for him.
And there was hundreds of people there there was hundreds of reefs. And it was not a sound. It was absolute silence. I mean, I just could not believe it. There was all these people there, and they're looking at the wreaths and whatever outside the Sir Matt Busby suite. And not a sound. Just reverence, you know, and that really is for, like, royalty or whatever, you know. That's for presidents, you know, to have that. And it was very moving, very touching.
You look back and you had your bad times, your good times, but you can't remember the bad times with Sir Matt. It just seems all good times, and the majority of the time it was. He obviously won't be the same because he was Mr. Manchester United. You know, you get used to going to the ground and he's having his bowl of soup there in the grill and having his daily walk with his pipe. You know, you can see him now.
The current crop of players arrived at Manchester United's training ground this morning without their usual buoyancy. To everyone at Old Trafford, Sir Matt Busby was the patriarch of a family, the creator of an institution, the man responsible for making Manchester United one of the most famous club sides anywhere in the world.
I think it's got through to everybody in Britain, you know, in the football world even. Sir Matt was a great man. He had greatest respect from all the players, or everybody in football. But not only that, just people throughout the world, because everybody knew what a gentleman he was. He always had time for everybody, and he's a great loss.
Proof of that international appeal couldn't be more apparent than this very weekend. The qualifying draw for the European Championships is taking place here in Manchester. The man who first had the foresight to take English football into Europe will be honoured by Europe, paying its respects, fittingly, at Old Trafford tomorrow.
We've got all these people from throughout Europe and FIFA coming to Manchester this weekend. They know Sir Matt Busby because he's made Manchester United a household name throughout the world of football. It's known and revered. Manchester United, the legend, is inextricably linked with Sir Matt Busby, the legend, in my view.
He's been such an important man to this club. You know, I believe they won the championship 4 or 5 times during his managership, and the FA Cup twice. He won the European Championship. He's been almost a fixture at the ground, and he will be sadly missed without any doubt.
He brought in new elements in football. He was very modern at an early time, and he was very flexible all the time. And therefore, the reputation of football is so very much depending on the personalities involved in football. If people have to respect to it and they understand that football is culture, and he was one of those who brought it to people's mind.
He was a great visionary, and he really introduced European football to this Great Britain, because he really forced the Football Association to go into Europe, and without his
without his pressure and without his position, probably we wouldn't have been into Europe for another 10 or 15 years.
He made Manchester alive with regard to football. People couldn't get down to Old Trafford quick enough, and they were all exciting matches, and he produced exciting players, and he just made it a magical place to be.
Matt Busby's story follows the familiar path of the Scottish village pit boy with a yearning to play professional football. He was born in the Lanarkshire village of Orbiston on May the 26th, 1909. A modest abode, beginnings he never lost sight of. One of his most endearing qualities was modesty.
I was born in a pitman's cottage, and the doctor who delivered me said, "A footballer has come to this house this day." He may have said that about most of the boys with whom he delivered.
Determined never to venture down the pits, Busby turned professional with Manchester City in February 1928 and helped them win the Cup in 1934, having lost the previous year. In goal for City that day was the great Frank Swift, who was to lose his life at Munich while travelling with United as a journalist. 2 years later, Busby was transferred to Liverpool, where he became club captain and also a father figure towards the younger players. The legend was beginning to take shape. Even then it was said he looked more like a bank manager than a professional footballer. The war years revealed his natural flair for leadership, Company Sergeant Major Busby. After the war, he became manager of Manchester United, despite the fact Old Trafford lay in ruins, devastated by German bombs. He teamed up with Jimmy Murphy. It was destined to become the most heralded partnership in the game's history. They were runners-up 4 times before that title victory in 1952, but the team, captained by Johnny Carey, and including the likes of Jack Rowley, Stan Pearson and Charlie Mitten, will always be remembered for winning the FA Cup in 1948. But Busby's greatest triumphs and greatest tragedy lay ahead. This is the team which became known as the Busby Babes. Over a period of 23 years, in his judgment, the Babes of the 50s were the best.
My first idea was to try and build on young boys, young players, and bring them up in the club atmosphere and the feeling for the club and character-wise and loyalty-wise.
The first of the home-reared players to be promoted, the first Busby Babe, was Roger Byrne, who was to become the distinguished captain of the fledgling side. United won the FA Youth Cup for 5 successive seasons from 1953. The Babes were thriving. Eddie Coleman, it was said, could shimmy one way and send the grandstand the other. David Pegg, Bobby Charlton's predecessor down the left. Dennis Violet, who would go on to eclipse Jack Rowley's club scoring record. Liam Whelan's ball skills even attracted offers from Brazil. His only major transfer was Tommy Taylor from Barnsley. But above all others was the incomparable Duncan Edwards, the lad from Dulwich, England's youngest ever international.
He was quite amazing in every aspect of the game, really. I said to Jimmy Murphy, I said, I've been trying to find a weakness in this boy, and I just can't find one.
The Busby Babes won the championship in consecutive seasons. Astonishingly, the average age of the side was just 21. They were denied a League and FA Cup double in a controversial Wembley final against Aston Villa. United, playing in white, were on top, but the outcome was influenced by one of Wembley's most infamous moments. Peter McParland of Villa clashed heavily with United's goalkeeper Ray Wood, who couldn't continue. McParland recovered to score twice.
Their only goal comes from this corner by Duncan Edwards. And that's Tommy Taylor heading it home.
The progressive Busby defied the Football Association's insularity with regard to English clubs competing in the European Cup by accepting United's invitation. In successive years, 57 and 58, they reached the semi-finals. Then tragedy struck. The disaster happened after a refuelling stop as United returned home following a 3-3 draw against Red Star Belgrade. Busby fought for his life in a Munich hospital. He was twice given the last rites. A lesser man wouldn't have made it. A city mourned, the world of football mourned. the potential lost was immeasurable.
Tommy Taylor, David Pegg, Eddie Coleman, Mark Jones, Billy Whelan, Jeb Bent. Oh. Tragic loss for them.
Whilst Busby was recovering, a shaken Jimmy Murphy picked up the baton. His scratch team of callow reserves and emergency signings was so hastily assembled the programme's team sheet was blank, but they still beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-0. The club and Busby had survived, but the man whose ideals seemed to have been destroyed found the pain almost too great to bear.
I felt at the time that one of the times when I did eventually come round, why did I take the club into Europe? Why would you go on a plane? I remember my first reaction was never to have anything to do with football again. And this was in my mind. And my wife went again, come along one of these days and said, if these boys had their say that it's passed on, they would want you to carry on. I was terrified to come and look at the ground and feel the people at that time. And as I say, the biggest obstacle, once I'd done it and I'd forced myself to do it, I had to do it, there was a sudden relief for me. It was a very trying time. I think it said something in the nature. We know, we're all aware of what's happened.
In of 58, United have been granted special dispensation to sign players who'd already played in the competition for other clubs. The nation wanted only one result for only one man.
United kick off with the sun but against the wind. Bolton winger Douglas Holden kicks upfield. Parry heads and Greg misses. Sends it for a corner. A near one there. Holden takes it. It's headed out and Ray Parry brings it back. He centres but Stan Crowther's there. He clears but Edwards returns it and Lofthouse runs in for a lighting goal. Up the Manchester end again with Bolton moving in fast. Dennis Stevens shoots. Greg parries but Nat Lofthouse charges in and there's Bolton's second goal.
And 2-0 was the final score. Reunited, Busby and Murphy were determined to build another great side. There was no alternative but to buy established talent. Albert Quicksall, Maurice Setters, Noel Cantwell, David Hurd, Dennis Law and Pat Crerand were expensive acquisitions as the late 1950s turned into the early 1960s. The signing of Law for £115,000 was a British record. The investments paid dividends when United won the FA Cup in '63.
David Hurd kicks off. Manchester United in red shirts, Leicester City in white. The cup final has begun. Crerand spots that inside left Dennis Law is well placed. Just watch how that Scottish wonder turns the pass to complete advantage.
Yes, the hero of the day was Dennis Law, soon to be dubbed by the Stretford Enders as the King. The flowing football had Busby's hallmark all over it. David Hurd for 3-1 and a second cup triumph for the boss.
United's captain, Noel Cantwell, leads his men up to the royal box. For them all, it's the fulfilment of an English footballer's ambition. The cup and a cup medal. Incidentally, it's a moment of triumph for their manager, Matt Busby. Proof that he has most successfully rebuilt United. We shall never forget the Munich air tragedy.
Though spending, Busby remained convinced that home-produced players were essential to the club's prosperity. Further evidence emerged in the fragile-looking frame of an Irish youth named George Best.
He had to be left to do things naturally. He had this tremendous ability. The people were there, they just waiting to see George Best. They weren't waiting to see anybody else.
Charlton, United moving forward again. Manchester there, George Best, a lot of room to work. Gibbons on his right. Best again. A glorious goal by Best. What a magnificent goal by Best.
He was different class because he wanted to play football the way it should be played. I mean, his team talk lasted about 2 seconds, and he used to throw the ball to us and tell us to go out and enjoy ourselves.
None of Busby's players enjoy greater prestige than Bobby Charlton.
He gave everything he got all the time. And of course, the qualities he had were tremendous. A tremendous rhythm in his movement. It was sort of something that you very rarely see. He used to glide past people on ease. And then if he sent a ball, he passed the ball a short one or even a long one. It was so accurate. And then you get the position when he came in and 25 yards, he just sort of shot, finishing off, he scored his goal.
Now that Busby had assembled the necessary parts for his pattern of play, his championship aspirations were realised on 2 further occasions, in 65 and 67.
There was a period of about 5 years, which was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful from the fans' point of view. It was lovely for the players to play under a manager whose basic speech was really, I know you can play football. Go out and play your football to the best of your ability. And as long as you've tried your best, can ask for no more. Win, lose, or draw. So it was a lovely philosophy. And it was a lovely philosophy in that we felt in a team, if we were trailing 2-0, we always had a feeling that we'd win 3-2.
The mood was heightened by a match which has gone down in folklore. Once again, Europe had Manchester United and Matt Busby to reckon with.
Benfica kicked off with Eusebio, reckoned Europe's best player in evidence, though Manchester United's defence was not to be caught napping. Dennis Law and the rest of Matt Busby's men had only one thought: attack. After 7 minutes, the ball went to George Best. Goal! It was only right that Bobby Charlton should get one himself. Goal number 5.
At the time, Busby described it as his finest hour.
He had a team that was good enough to win it, and I think that he felt that. And of course, the accident brought all that to an end. But it was obvious that it was something that needed to be done, you know, for the respect to be shown properly to the ones that had died in the effort of trying to win it initially.
May 1968, destination Wembley. Their opponents once again Benfica. The Portuguese champions had appeared in 2 previous finals, but almost with home advantage, Busby was on the verge of realising his dream.
For the players that had gone in the crash, for Bobby Charlton and Bill Foulkes, who were members of that team, who fortunately survived, even the players, the directors, there was the chairman and directors, and everybody concerned. It was a night of achievement.
The biggest thrill I got out of all this time that I knew the man was just seeing his face after the final in '68 when we had won.
To mark the triumph, Busby's achievements were acknowledged on a broad scale. 10 years after being awarded the CBE, he was knighted. Among other honours came the freedom of Manchester. Then came retirement. After 5 championships, 2 FA Cups, and the ultimate satisfaction of Wembley '68, it was to be 26 years before the championship returned to Sir Matt's spiritual home.
And when I was having a hard time in '89, I did go to him, you know, and sat down. He was puffing away his pipe, and he says, "How's things, son?" I says, "Well," I says, "hard." I says, "Press are giving me a, you know." He said, "Why do you read them?" You know, that's the most, as simple as advice anyone could possibly get, and I can't even think of it myself. And that is as good advice I'll ever get in my life.
I'm just so glad, you know, we won the league. It was the same for the European Cup. We won it, and we won the league for him as well.
I think that over this last couple of years, he's really enjoyed it more than ever, because the teams have been playing well, and he's been going down there, and he's enjoyed it.
Manchester United will always be known as Matt Busby United, really, to the people who knew him and had played under him and were friends with him. But the lovely thing was, although he's passed away, is that he saw his beloved United win the title last year. That was lovely.
Oh, Sama, we salute you, and we're proud to be resident.
I think he was the greatest, really. I think so many people tried to copy him and did copy him in lots of ways. But I think he was the greatest. People have won more honours, you know, but in the game at that particular time, you know, every manager used to come and try to pick his brains, try to see how he made things work. You might lose, you know, but the club was still big, you know. It was the place to be. You can't really say what his contribution was. It was enormous, absolutely enormous.
I hope we can go out tomorrow now and turn in a really great performance, and you know, let's remember Samat for all the great things he did for this club and for football in general. And if we get a great result against Everton, then it's only due.
But the ones like Sir Pop and Mark Hughes, and who've grown up in Manchester United and grown up under the presence of Samat, they're going to feel it. And we're all going to be feeling it tomorrow. It's going to be a really emotional day. But we'll have to handle it. People say, will life go on? The life's got to go on. It doesn't really need to always go on. I mean, tomorrow I think it should stop for a day, because he was that wonderful man, but the game will go on. Unfortunately, it will be going. I'd rather it didn't, to be honest with you.
Samat Busby would like to remember, from our point of view, how football should be played. On the ground, attacking moves, exciting moves, winning games with not score lines, but with flair, spectacular goals, and wave football. That's all we always remember him. That's what he has given to Manchester United, but given to English football and to Europe and to world football. He's given all that.
And what will you specifically miss?
I'll miss him.
Every aspect. Is there anything you regret that you never said, did, anything?
Not money.
Football managers have built empires. Herbert Chapman at Arsenal before the war, Bill Shankly with Liverpool, Jock Stein undoubtedly at Celtic. But Matt Busby, a man of the people, outreached even their achievements. He was manager of his club for nearly 25 years. He crafted not just one outstanding team, but three, building the first out of wartime rubble, cornering the cream of teenage talent to create the second in the 50s, only for his babes to perish at Munich, and then out of disaster, assembling a dazzling third generation. Yet beyond the horizons of Manchester and the British game, Busby also marched English football across European frontiers. He was persuader, pioneer, and as far as Manchester United were concerned, president and patriarch.
When people say to me, what influence did Matt Busby have on Manchester United, you think back to 1945. You think to a bombed ground with very little covering, very little stand covering, and you look at you think, well, what were Manchester United in terms of world football? Practically nothing. And you look at Manchester United today, and you think, well, Matt Busby started all this.
His contribution to the game itself, you know, can't be measured. I mean, you go anywhere in the world, they talk about Matt Busby, they talk about Manchester United, and they think of him in glowing terms. Think of him as the nice man, a very genuine man, a person that knew his business, but always remembered your name. One thing I was always staggered by how he remembered everyone's name, and even if he might have met them 10 years ago, he was just phenomenal, and he just made you feel good. And I'm not just talking about players, I'm talking about the staff, I'm talking about fans, other directors. Whenever you bumped into Man United, to Matt Busby, you know, you always felt really good. He made you feel that way. Well, he's the greatest manager ever. I mean, we've had some terrific managers, and no one's underestimating him in any way, but he was the lord of them all, and they all used to come from advice. He pioneered the English teams going into Europe. The vision of that, and if everything is done for a purpose, then winning the European Cup was absolutely perfect for him.
And it was just the aura of the man, you know. He had so much respect from not just players and people within football, but any walk of life. You'd meet people in Manchester who were just friends of Samat, and they all knew what a real gentleman he was. And he was a credit to how society should be, not just how you should be in football.
he never had to go at people's self-esteem, which he instilled it in his players as well. I never heard him badmouth anybody, and that's not just saying things people want to hear. I can never remember him swearing. He was such a lovely man.
When we won the championship last year, and everybody was jumping about, and he was just sitting there like, but you knew that inside he was jumping about, and it was special for us that we won it through.
He is one of the few legends we are having in football. If you look back what he went through, what he established and what he stood for, I think that Matt Busby was known by everyone interested in football and loved by everyone. That is, to me, a fact.
He had a feeling for everybody, you know, not only the superstars, but the guy who swept the terracing. And he'll always remember he was generous, he was a humble man, and integrity of the highest caliber. He is the greatest loss to British football, or probably world football, for a long, long time.
Busby's playing career started with Manchester City, a wing-half silky in possession, said Joe Mercer. And in the 30s, Matt played in 2 FA Cup finals, collecting a winner's medal when City beat Portsmouth in 1934. It wouldn't be the last time that Busby would celebrate in the streets of Manchester, but in 1936 he joined Liverpool and during the war captained Scotland. Leadership qualities were now surfacing. Back in Manchester, where German bombs had done their worst and Old Trafford was lying almost derelict, the United chairman, J.W. Gibson, offered Busby the job of manager.
Jimmy Gibson was there, and of course he wanted me to become manager, and I said, well, I'd think about it. And but before the interview was over, I had finished up saying for Manchester United.
They didn't even have a ground. United's players trained in a car park, and for the next 4 years they used Main Road, the stadium of Busby's old club, Manchester City, to stage their home matches. But United finished runners-up in the First Division 3 years running, and in 1948 they played Blackpool in one of the best cup finals ever seen at Wembley. Stanley Matthews was among the opposition, but it was Busby's team who came out on top.
Manchester kick-off. Renowned slow starters, their match-winning attack seems to have lost the rhythm that has brought them along the road to Wembley. A close duel between Manchester's Johnny Carey and Blackpool's Walter Rickett, number 11, is highlight number 1 in a thrill-packed match. Highlight number 2 comes when Stan Mortensen is tripped in the penalty area and referee Barrick awards Blackpool a spot kick. As the crowd rise to cheer, Eddie Schimmel drives it home to give the Seasiders the lead. Manchester's Jack Rowley, walking the ball into the net to equalise, provides highlight number 3. From a free kick and a seemingly impossible angle, Stanley Mortensen whips in a goal to give Blackpool the half-time lead. But now Manchester's attack, which has scored 95 goals this season, swings into its best style. From Johnny Morris's well-placed free kick, the fans cheer Jack Rowley's headed equaliser. Charlie Mitten, number 11, starts off United's winning attack. And from Rowley's pass, Stan Pearson scores the goal that gives Manchester the cup. The King hands the silver trophy to skipper Johnny Carey. Their 4-2 victory, snatched in the last few minutes, gives Manchester United the reward they richly deserve.
The 1948 team had life left in their legs yet. They finished runners-up in the First Division for the 4th time in 1951, and a year later, United were crowned champions. Carey's team brought the title to Old Trafford for the first time in 41 years. But life was changing. Busby's youngsters, recruited from his intricate scouting system, won the FA Youth Cup, and with senior players now showing signs of strain, the manager made a bold decision.
It started playing in my mind. We'd had a lot of success at that time. I felt as though I had to do something with a view to becoming another team, to get young players, get players going. And my main problem at that time was when and where to bring them in. And I always remember Johnny Carey was the captain at the time, and I mentioned this matter to him sometime, and he said, he says, whenever you feel ready, the lads will go along with it and because they realised that they're getting towards the end.
And so the Busby Babes were born. Post-war austerity had given way to freedom and optimism. The next generation were looking for idols, and the fresh young faces Busby had nurtured embodied the spirit of the time.
The first question, Matt, is how do you find these boys?
Well, I'd say, Bill, I have a scouting system whose sole object is to go out looking for young, promising schoolboys, youth club boys, and indeed any young players who have the necessary natural ability to make a future Manchester United player.
In 1956, United were champions again.
There's Berry, getting them going. Berry, number 7 with the ball. Still United on the attack. And then great chance there for Violet. This time it's a penalty. It's Berry. Berry took the penalty. And that makes the score 1-1. Peg with it out on the left wing. All the United forwards up. Violet. Cross to Berry. It comes the right wing. Blackpool defense trying the offside game. Berry going through with it by himself. Cross it comes and Palms made a perfect hit.
Now Busby's thoughts turn to the European Cup. A year earlier, the Football League stopped Chelsea from entering. Busby's view was more enlightened.
I said that this was not a Scottish game, it was not an English game, it was not an Irish game, it was a world game. And in view of that, I influenced them to join the European Association, the European Company, with a view to playing the European Cup.
Captain Roger Byrne, along with the likes of Duncan Edwards and Tommy Taylor, was ready for the challenge. United's opponents here, Bilbao, had won the first leg in Spain 5-3, but at Main Road it was a different story.
4 minutes before half-time, Manchester's Violet goes through and it's a goal! Manchester's second came from a free kick, Taylor doing the rest. He and Berry made the third, and Manchester was set for the semi-finals.
Where their opponents were the holders, Real Madrid. In the first leg in the vast Bernabeu Stadium, United's young team were overawed by Di Stefano and company. But a goal by Tommy Taylor in a 3-1 defeat kept hopes alive for the second leg. At Old Trafford, Real Madrid scored twice more. The average age of their team was 28, as against United's 21, and the Babes were 5-1 down on aggregate. But in the second half, United showed the fighting spirit that was no less than Busby expected. They scored twice, the second coming from 19-year-old Bobby Charlton. Bobby kept his place when United went to Wembley for the FA Cup final against Aston Villa a few weeks later.
Has got to Sewell. McParland. And that was a fair charge, but unfortunately their heads have collided. And both McParland and Wood are out.
That sickening collision was to cost Champions United the chance of becoming the first side this century to do the League and Cup double. The impact of McParland's challenge shattered Wood's cheekbone. And with Jackie Blanchflower taking over in goal, in an age when there were no substitutes, Busby's team were down to 10 men.
McParland. Dixon.
United lost 2-1. The double would have to wait. But as they reported for the start of the 1957-58 season, Edwards and his young cohorts had a third successive championship in their sights, as well as another crack at the European Cup. The red shirt worn by Roger Byrne and his still developing team had become a symbol of hope, not just for United, but for English football. How far could they go together under Busby?
It was a tremendously happy time. There were boys that had come to this club from leaving school. And you get a tremendous kick out of a boy coming and eventually coming through and making himself a top-class player. And in this era of the I suppose Busby Babes, we had quite a lot come through, actually practically a team. And of course, you get a tremendous sense of seeing a boy achieving this, and you get a tremendous sense of achievement yourself. And I think this is a great thrill.
It was spectators all around the country who were thrilled by the adventurous, spontaneous football that Busby encouraged his team to play. It was a style that Manchester United would attempt to emulate for decades to come.
Take out the number 10 Edwards. This equalising goal must come. And there it is! Yes, it's a great goal! It's scored by Coleman!
Belgrade, February 1958. In the quarter-finals of the European Cup, United had a slender 2-1 lead from the first leg against Red Star, the champions of Yugoslavia. Inside 90 seconds, Dennis Viollet put United ahead. And then, still in the first half, Bobby Charlton scored twice in 2 minutes, giving them a 5-1 aggregate lead at half-time. It was riveting stuff, but tragically, it was the Busby Babes' final, fateful match.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war.
The final death toll of 23 included 8 players, 8 journalists and 3 of Busby's backroom staff. At a stroke, the finest young football team England had ever seen was wiped out. In Munich's Rechter Isar Hospital, Matt Busby fought for life in an oxygen tent. United's programme for their FA Cup tie with Sheffield Wednesday had 11 blank spaces, as Busby's assistant, Jimmy Murphy, hastily pulled together a team of untried youngsters and emergency signings. On a huge wave of emotion, United won 3-0, and in one night, a football club became a movement. The occasion was especially overwhelming for Harry Gregg and Bill Fuchs, who'd survived the crash less than 2 weeks earlier. Now, Professor George Maurer, the German surgeon who had skillfully tended United's injured, came to Old Trafford with his medical team. Busby was still in hospital back in Munich, too weak to travel, but he sent a tape-recorded message to the crowd.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am speaking from my bed in the Isar Hospital, Munich, where I have been since the tragic accident of just over a month ago. You will be glad, I am sure, to know that the remaining players here and myself are now considered out of danger. And this can be attributed to the wonderful treatment and attention given us by Professor Maurer and his wonderful staff who are with you today as guests of the club.
Gene Busby welcomed Matt home. He faced a long convalescence. He followed United's fortunes on film as they got through the quarter and semi-finals of the FA Cup, but his retirement seemed inevitable.
I very soon after that was in the mind that I couldn't face it again. And this went on for some few weeks. And it was my wife passed one time, and while I was in the hospital there, something about you would have to go and prove yourself to the people that had gone. There's no use in lying down under this type of thing. And I got a change of mind. It was a very, very difficult thing. And of course, I came back and I really set my mind on getting down to it again.
When he took his seat at Old Trafford for a league match against Newcastle, Busby was given a magnificent reception. Came the day of the FA Cup final against Bolton Wanderers, and Matt, still walking with the aid of a stick, was able to take his place on the touchline to watch the game.
Corner for Bolton. Taken by Holden. Parry. Rather out to Edwards. Lofthouse a goal! And Lofthouse to score. 10 minutes of the second half gone. 1-0, Bolton leading. Holden to Parry. Holden, number 11. Stevens, Edwards. To Stevens. A goal by Lofthouse.
For the second year running, Busby's FA Cup hopes were dashed by a reckless challenge on Manchester United's goalkeeper. The rebuilding job started here. back in his tracksuit, Busby knew that this time he would have to buy ready-made stars rather than develop young talent. As his own energy returned, so too did his desire to make United great again. The 60s was starting, a decade of glitter, glamour and opportunism. Qualities Busby found in one man, paying a then record fee of £115,000 to bring Dennis Law home from Turin. In his first season, Law led United to Wembley.
That's Clear and coming in with power. Law can do it, he's got it. Oh, a beautiful ball to Charlton. We're going to see a shot surely.
David Hurd scored twice as United went on to win 3-1. But the most exciting talent ever to come off the Old Trafford production line was about to warm Busby's heart.
Yes. With McCready, and McCready's made a catch, and it's a magnificent goal. Yes. What a magnificent goal. A truly brilliant piece of
In George Best's first full season, United won the championship.
Charlton to Best. Hurd and Law in the middle. Charlton lurking on the penalty area. There's Law, and it's 3-0. Beautiful goal by Law.
Best, Law and Charlton gave United exactly what Busby wanted, style.
Many, many times when they tried something that didn't come off, that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. And with it all, I was always very happy that they were a creative side, building up creation rather than destruction.
The championship in 1965 meant United were back in the European Cup, and in the quarter-final in Lisbon they produced one of the most scintillating displays ever witnessed in the Premier competition, beating Benfica 5-1 in the Stadium of Light with Best unstoppable. He came home a hero, and Busby would later have to face the problems that brought. But the Holy Grail was still beyond United's grasp. They lost in the semi-final. Now in his late 50s, still carrying the scars of Munich, Busby must have wondered whether the European Cup would ever be attainable. The bulk of his team were either at or near their peak, and expectation was higher than ever. But in 1967, United were champions again, Busby's 5th title as manager. They won it in a flourish, beating West Ham 6-1 at Upton Park. It was celebration time again, and the delight on the faces of Nobby Stiles and Paddy Crerand reflected that it was still Busby's team. Busby's influence, Busby's ambition. It was his right too to collect the trophy before a worshipping audience at Old Trafford.
This is another great day in the history of Manchester United. And now the Stretford end erupts.
Manchester United were back in the European Cup.
We've had the experience. First of all, the 3 semi-finals we've played again in the European Cup. In 1956, our boys, it was a very young side, and we played Real Madrid, who were probably one of the greatest club sides, if not the greatest it's ever been. And we lost, I thought, through inexperience because we were a very young team. The following year, of course, we had the tragedy at Munich, and that was that type of thing. The last year, I thought we were sure to win it, because we'd gone and we'd beaten Benfica in Lisbon and played so magnificently. I rather think it gave us a false impression. And the semi-final we played Partizan, and I think we rather took the view that we just got to go on the field and play and pick up the semi-final and go into the final. I think it was this, I think, was the reason why we lost.
There is talk. Sorry, Jimmy, go on.
I know, I say. No, I think the experience of this should do us in good stead this time.
In the quarter-final, United overcame the Polish champions Górnik. Old Trafford was in ecstasy. The semi-final was a throwback to 1957, Manchester United against Real Madrid.
Best again. Good flick that was by Best. This is Aston. Again the cue at the far post for the cross if he can get it back. Ran well for him. Best. Beauty. A real good goal.
United took that one-goal advantage into the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid, where at half-time they were 3-1 down, 3-2 on aggregate. But then Best headed on for David Sadler to make the scores level, and the dogged belief that had enabled Busby to rebuild from the crash 10 years earlier came to the fore again. In the dressing room at half-time, he'd said, "Keep on attacking," so Best did. And the man who scored the goal, incredibly, was a defender and a Munich survivor, Bill Fuchs. It meant United won 4-3 on aggregate and were in the final of the European Cup for the first time. The arms might have been round the shoulders of Matt Busby that night, but a huge weight had been lifted off them. At Wembley, he was feted before the game. Now, at 59, the spring in his step gladdened the hearts of those who'd seen him limp round the Wembley track in the wake of the crash 10 years earlier. The occasion was ready-made for United. Opponents Benfica were a team like themselves, laced with stars, but ready to make a memorable night of it.
United have got Benfica on the run now. Sadler, Charlton, a goal! He scored! Charlton has scored! Zé Augusto, Torres, Simoes, Benfica unmarked in the middle. This is Eusebio! Oh, what a save by Stepney! And what a sportsman Eusebio, when he could have won that match, to applaud Stepney like that. Charlton to Aston. Oh, and he's got the legs of Adolfo. And a corner. Oh, my Kid! Charlton's the Kid. Best Charlton in the middle, so too is Aston. Charlton! Another! He's got another! Everybody wants to shout now. Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
For Matt Busby, the dream was at last fulfilled.
That was my greatest night. There is no question about that. I had lived for it for a long time. And this was the culmination of all my ideas, my ambitions, was winning the European Cup.
A few weeks later, Busby was knighted, but Sir Matt chose not to retire until the following January, when, after 23.5 years as manager, he finally handed over the reins to Wilf McGuinness, one of the original Busby babes. But despite reaching 3 cup semi-finals, the young successor found the task overwhelming, and Busby moved back into the manager's chair himself for a short spell. Older players were clearly not ready for a younger manager. In 1971, Frank O'Farrell was appointed, and United again briefly topped the table. But after 18 months, O'Farrell was out, and United turned to Tommy Docherty, who stayed 4.5 years and won the FA Cup. Next to try, Dave Sexton, who took United to second place in the league. And then, in 1981, the extrovert Ron Atkinson took over, winning the FA Cup twice. But none of them, it seemed, could match Sir Matt's record. He was now club president, but it was still his name the fans chanted at the Stretford end. In 1986, Alex Ferguson from Scottish working-class stock like Busby came from Aberdeen. At first, he too had to contend with the history and expectation that came with Busby's towering standards. But in 1993, the Championship trophy returned to Old Trafford after 26 years. How appropriate that Sir Matt, coming up to his 84th birthday, should share in the celebrations. For millions across the world, Sir Matt Busby simply was Manchester United.
Give me one piece of advice, so simple, effective, and it probably did more than anything to help me ride the storm when I had a bit of difficulties in 1989. And he says to me, when I first come in, he says, "Well, you know where I am if you need me." And it's always said to me. And I went to him, I says, he was sitting puffing in his pipe, and he says, "How's things, son?" I says, "Bloody press are driving me mad." He says, "Why, read them?" Now, how could I know I thought of that?
I've seen managers come to him, you know, and they were in awe of him as a personality. Bill Shankly, I always remember Bill Shankly, one of the Liverpool players, said they couldn't believe they saw Bill Shankly with a drink because he didn't drink. But Matt Busby had said, "Bill, how would you like a glass of sherry?" And he couldn't refuse him. And he didn't drink, but he took it, you know. He had this rapport with people. They loved him and they respected him and they were in awe of him. And it's very difficult to explain it. Really, it was just his own personality. You couldn't copy it.
You couldn't tell somebody else how to do it. It was Matt Busby, and that was it. I mean, he was that sort of person. He was a great bloke. He was a great man. I mean, a big man, a giant in football terms. I mean, nobody better, nobody bigger.